Okay, all right, sorry.
And the light will come on. The light is on.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the March 12th, 2025 regular meeting of your Scarborough Zoning Board of Appeals. The meeting will now come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, the public has the right to hear everything that is being said and view all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chairperson, that's me tonight, if you are unable to hear or to see the proceedings. The board works from a prepared agenda and will take up tonight's items in the following order. So we are going to start with approval of the minutes of the February 12th meeting. We're then going to vote on a written decision from an appeal from last meeting. Written decision for appeal number 2767, limited reduction of yard size, residential appeal at 18 Houghton Street. The next agenda item will be appeal number 2768. This is an administrative appeal by Coastal Remedies LLC. We'll then go to appeal number 2769, a special exception appeal by Timothy Morris. We'll then go to appeal number 2770, variance appeal by Kerry and Alexander Martin. Because a quorum is 4, I believe our alternate Michael Campbell will need to be elevated tonight to a full voting member. Are you prepared to accept the responsibilities as a, all right, terrific. You are so elevated. Oh, okay. And also, yes, Joe, you're also being elevated tonight. Welcome. I guess with that, we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Doreen, can you call the roll?
David Bork,
Here.
Joe Doherty,
Here.
Cal Noonan,
Present.
and Michael Campbell.
Here.
Okay, so hearing a quorum, we'll forge ahead. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the February 12th, 2025 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Any commentary? Okay. Any motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chair. So moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Terrific. The minutes are approved from the February 12th, 2025 meeting. The next item on the agenda, subject 4.01, written decision for appeal number 2767, limited reduction of yard size residential appeal at 18 Houghton Street. Houghton Street. Has everyone had a chance to review that written decision? Any commentary on it? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve that written decision.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Terrific. The written decision is approved. The next item on the agenda, subject 4.02, appeal number 2768. This is an administrative appeal by Coastal Remedies LLC. So this is an administrative appeal. And so what we are dealing with here is whether there was an error in any order, decision, or ruling made by the building inspector in the enforcement of the ordinance at issue. So I think we'll start now if the appellant Coastal Remedies LLC, through its agent Chris McNeil or his counsel is here. Please go ahead and make the case.
You can, if you want to say something after I do my thing. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jill Cohen. I'm a partner at Beryl Dana in our Portland office in the Energy, Telecommunications, and Natural Resources Group. I'm here tonight representing Chris McNeil and Coastal Remedies, his company that's located at 3 Commercial Road. We are here tonight to ask you to find that the code enforcement officer erred in issuing a notice of violation for an odor complaint that occurred on January 6, 2025. This will be the first time Scarborough's new odor ordinance has been before you. This ordinance was enacted over the summer. And so this is the first time we're really sort of flexing it and seeing how it works in reality. The biggest change in this ordinance was it does now authorize law enforcement to show up in addition to code enforcement to verify odor complaints. The word verify appears 8 times in a 1-page ordinance. We are here tonight because we do not believe this odor complaint was properly verified. On around 9:50 a.m. on January 6th, abutters at Pondview Road called in an odor complaint and said that they could smell the odor of marijuana in their driveway. Police responded at 10:27 a.m. and the police report uses the word suspected. It says that the odor is suspected to be coming from 3 Commercial Road due to prevailing winds from west to east. Code Enforcement Officer Longstaff came out at 11:45. He could not detect odor beyond, at the premises. The complainant at that same time said that they could still smell the odor. At that time, Brian Longstaff met with Chris. There was no odor detected outside, a normal amount of odor inside the facility. Again, the word suspected was used, that they suspected that maybe the odor was coming from a south side exhaust vent at the building. The result of the on-site visit was that the point of origin was, quote, undetermined, but at this facility. When we received the notice of violation, Mr. McNeil followed up and asked via email to Officer Longstaff, did you verify the odor was from my facility or was it just at the neighbor's house? And the response from Code Officer Longstaff included that they had reached the logical conclusion. So we have the use of the word suspected twice. Now we've reached a logical conclusion about the source of the odor. Never once was odor verified to be coming from 3 Commercial. If you look, you have several exhibits in your packet. One of them is the police report where you can reference the email that I just referenced is in your packet. The police report is there that I referenced, as well as Exhibit C. Also included, just to verify the times of everything, is the printout from law enforcement as Exhibit D. So those things are available for your review. One thing I would point out is why it's so important to verify these complaints is Coastal Remedies is not the only cannabis facility on Commercial Road. There's a cannabis facility at 3 Commercial. There's another one at 4 Commercial. There are also 2 other facilities. One is 0.3 miles away. I would point out it is west of Pondview Road. So if the crux of this is the winds are moving from west to east, we have 2 other facilities, 148 Pleasant Hill Road at 0.4 miles away and 137 Pleasant Hill Road at 0.3 miles away. Both are west of the Pondview Road location. Both of those are manufacturing facilities that are manufacturing harvested cannabis into other products. So certainly odor could have been emitting from those facilities or even from 4 Commercial or even from a private residence where adults are authorized either under the medical program or adults over 21 are authorized to possess and use cannabis. So The reason the word verified appears in your ordinance 8 times is I was involved in the ordinance development process, and this was our big concern, was the reason it's so important is once you hit 5 odor violations, you're brought back before the council and your business license can be revoked. And that would be the end of a business that Mr. McNeil has been building in Scarborough for a number of years. So that's why this is so important to get it right. So that is why I stood up here before the ordinance committee and before the council to make sure the word verified repeatedly appeared in this ordinance, because this was our concern all along, was that people would reach a logical conclusion. And unfortunately, 3 Commercial bears the brunt of many logical conclusions related to odor. This is their 3rd odor complaint. Just for clarification purposes, the first 2 odor complaints the first one occurred and the second one occurred literally while they were conducting remediation at the facility, meaning they were installing fans. They had somebody come out to seal every crevice in the place. Chris can talk to you about everything that they've done at the facility. So we got the first odor complaint. He took it very seriously, literally in the process of remediating the facility, and gets a second complaint. So then we get this 3rd complaint early January, which our position was unverified. So that really sort of puts them on the bubble. They have to make it to August without 2 more complaints. So they're confident in everything that they've done at the building. There have been no complaints since January 6th. But we have a concerned abutter, and rightfully so. I know they submitted public comment tonight, and they've been at every meeting as well. And I understand their concern, right? It's their quality of life. But you have to also take into account this is his life, this is Mr. McNeil's life and his business, and we can't be frivolous about these complaints. And I don't mean that in an insulting way to Mr. Longstaff, but these complaints need to be verified. So this is the first time that this ordinance will be tested in front of a zoning board of appeals on an administrative appeal. One other thing I would point out is while Scarborough did authorize law enforcement to get involved in these odor complaints, no training was provided to law enforcement. So this is all just like, shooting darts in the dark at a dartboard. So it's not like anybody received any training on how to verify an odor complaint or what other possible sources of odor there could be. Like I said, 3 other facilities within, 0.4 miles, one right across the road. I mean, literally right across the road. And also the possibility that neighbors are using cannabis or growing cannabis even. So that's the issue today, is the words the documentation says what it says. Odor was suspected to be coming from 3 Commercial Road. We reached a logical conclusion. Those aren't our words. That's from documentation that was provided to us by the town of Scarborough. So we're here tonight to ask you to consider the actual evidence, the actual words that were said, and the actions that were taken in issuing this notice of violation at 3 Commercial Road. And we're asking you to find that code enforcement erred and that this was not a verified odor complaint that could be attributed to 3 Commercial. Thank you. Chris, do you want to talk about it?
Hi, how you doing? Chris McNeil. Never done this, so not really sure of how this goes, if it goes back and forth. This is my one and only chance. So Jill touched upon the history a little bit. To back up a little bit, I've been there 3 years. So the first year, really, from my understanding in hindsight, there was no ordinance in town, and so the neighbors were complaining a lot. I never knew anything about those complaints. So it basically went a whole year of me operating, thinking everything's great, no issues. The town's passing some different ordinances, not even honestly paying attention to it because my head's down and running my business. Nobody's complained. And the neighbors spent a frustrating year, right? And just to be clear, I've got 3 kids, right? I am a teacher by trade. I taught 20 years in a private school. I retired from that job. I'm into this. Like, my kids don't know that I run this business. They don't know that I'm in this, and not that I'm embarrassed about cannabis, but it's just not appropriate. It's not around, like, there's not drinking, there's not smoking around my kids. So like, I'm very cognizant as an adult and as a citizen and a parent of being a good neighbor and like in where weed goes and where the smell goes, right? So all those things being said, so we operate basically a full year plus of apparently stinking, right? and them getting very frustrated. So I can understand their frustration. I've made a bunch of good faith attempts to communicate with them, to invite them, to show them. The neighbor next to them, I have a very good relationship with. She has no issues with me. Whenever there's been an issue, I've addressed it immediately. Things like a dumpster flew open, some trash went into a horse yard, so I put my team right on it. But this neighbor is frustrated. Jill's right. There is an abutter. I should have probably drawn something up here. I'm a diagram person. No, I don't care about that. This is my building. It's along this way. 4 commercials right here, right? The wind blows this way. This is my parking lot. So 4 commercial butts my parking lot, right? This little L right here, that's one neighbor, no complaints. The neighbor who has an issue is right here, right? So it is a wind tunnel, right? Brian and I talked about it. It's a wind tunnel right down there, right? So whatever cannabis smell is coming from either facility is coming into this parking lot and going out there. I've long suspected that it's my exhaust fan right here, right? So backing track. So I spent a year not knowing, right? Once this noise ordinance passed, I obviously fought it. I think it's a little ludicrous, but I understand it, right? Since it's passed, we've done a bunch of things to mitigate the odor. I've spent a bunch of money putting fans in. I've consulted with the folks at Snow Canning who I think that's really where all this odor issue started, was that facility. So I've consulted with the owner of that building and said, hey, what have you guys done to fix it? So I've done all those things. We did those things. We had our first complaint. Brian's been on the facility a number of times, had our first complaint. Said, okay, we think it's this. Here's what we're going to do. I installed more carbon filters. I installed a better fan. I sealed the whole exit of my mechanical building for the exhaust. So like, I'm thinking this is what's blowing air out. Every day for the past year at 8:30 when I get to work, I walk down my parking lot. Do I smell weed? Do I smell weed? Is it under this exhaust fan? I don't smell weed there. Good. Let me walk down the center of the parking lot. I walk down the center of my parking lot every single day. And Brian knows this. I've talked about it. Sometimes I smell weed. Sometimes I don't. I can't for the life of me figure out what it is. Can't for the life of me figure out what it is. I've assumed for many months and years that it's this right here, and we've taken all actions to mitigate that. But when I'm in the middle of the parking lot, I smell weed. So we had the situation, Brian comes over. I'm an honest guy. I'm talking to you like I'm talking to you right now. It is logical to a degree, like if there's weed, if it's gotta be this, but I still don't know what it is. It makes sense if the wind's blowing this way and I have my exhaust vent right there, and that's the conversation about the wind. If my exhaust vent is blowing out here and the wind is blowing this way, and it stinks right there, it makes sense that they're gonna smell it right there. But I don't smell it right here. He doesn't smell it right there, but I smell it down the street in the parking lot. The other day, and I'm not saying this because I'm up here talking, the other day, there's no wind. I smell weed. Okay, a slight breeze. Do the yellow finger test. Huh. This way would be me. This way is not me. Sure enough, again, grass in the air, right? I mean, I'm a little bit of a lunatic about this. I want to figure out what's going on. It's for commercial. Here's my building. Here's their building. I'm in the middle of the parking lot, right at the paperclip. That's where I'm at. I smell weed, right? My exhaust is up here by my finger. There's no weed. I'm in this parking lot with a slight wind this way. I smell weed. It's not me, right? So that was a little bit of an eye-opening moment for me. I haven't even shared that with Brian. I immediately called Jill because I think Jill represents them. And I said, hey, just so you know, I'm not taking the brunt of this all the time because I don't think it's me. And I have taken the brunt of it because I am the direct abutter, obviously, right? And it does make some sense. I'm right there. But if the next neighbor is smelling and it's in the parking lot, which is in the same, for my facility in the parking lot, it's going to smell. I've been at my building, stuck my head behind the building, can't smell it. Stick my head over here, down the breeze, I can smell it. Walk up my building, I cannot smell it. Not coming out of my exhaust, I cannot smell it. So like, from my perspective, I've got my life into this, so I'm obviously paying very close attention to it every single day. And so that's just a little history, right? So that's a little history. So I'm a good faith neighbor. I'm trying to do everything I can. Brian will attest to that, that when we have issues, I'm trying. I bring them right to the facility, say, I think this might be the problem today. Today, we're having a come down, right? Maybe they left the door open, right? I showed him flour in the hallway. Oh, that's not following our standard operating procedures. That flour should be in the room shut, and when it comes out of the room, the door should be open and shut, and it should go right down the hallway to where it's supposed to be. It shouldn't be out in the hallway. And I invited him in on a whim to like walk around and say, hey, let's work on this together, right? So I'm a good faith actor, and I'll wrap it up here. I'm a good faith actor. I'm not a bad neighbor. I understand that frustration. We're doing everything we can. I've taken efforts. I will continue to take efforts. I just don't think that this violation was verified. Brian and I didn't verify, and I understand the officer, he verified it at the neighbor's house, but just because you verify at the neighbor's house doesn't mean it's me, right? There's more than one abutter. If I smell weed in my parking lot, doesn't mean it's me. I have more than one abutter, right? And I'm not talking down the street. I'm talking like me to you. We're all in the same room. Like, here's my body odor. Is it me? Is it him? Maybe it's him, maybe it's me, but you just can't walk in the room and say, oh, it's you because this person's complained about you. So that's my issue. I honestly don't think it was me. And I'm fairly confident that it was not verified. I know Brian didn't verify, and I don't know if the officer came over to the 3 commercial property or not, but I can tell you that driving over to the property and rolling down your window and smelling weed is not verifying an odor complaint, right? Verifying an odor complaint is saying, this is where the wind's blowing. I can smell the source here. It's stronger over here versus over here. This is where it's coming from. And I'm fairly certain that it's coming from, and I'll stake a certain value to that, right? And the value that I stake on it is this is my life, right? I got my life savings into this business, like most small business owners. So like, that's the value that I stake in being right or wrong, right? And that's the consequence for me. So I think that's it. I don't know what else I should say. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil and Attorney Cohen. Officer Kaufman, are you willing to make a few remarks as well? All right, and next we'll move, I guess we could formally open the public comment right now, but since I see you here, if you don't mind just starting, that would be great.
Of course. So like what has already been kind of said is at about 9:50 on January 6th, we received a report that there was strong smell of marijuana coming from somewhere in the nearby area. At approximately 10:30 in the morning, I had gone to the address that was making the complaint. I went to their driveway, and I was able to verify that there was a strong smell of marijuana. Kind of what Mr. McNeil was saying. No, I did not get it out of my cruiser. I was able to verify that the smell was in fact in that area. From there, I had my dispatch contact Mr. Longstaff to go and continue the investigation from there. But at this time, what we were told to do is go ahead, check and see if there's a strong smell from there, and then contact code enforcement for further investigation.
Do you mind if I just ask you some
course,
follow-up
yeah.
questions? I'll have some follow-up questions as well for your folks as well. But actually, I think maybe it would be more appropriate, and I'd be other members of the board can weigh in on this if we just completed the public comment before we went into the examination.
Okay.
If there's anyone else that would like to speak on this appeal.
Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
I think that we have to proceed through the felon's case and then hear sort of a whole from the person that they're appealing. So it's good that Officer Kaufman is here to offer his testimony, but I think then I would get up, offer my testimony, my accounts.
Oh, okay. All right, sure.
Then now they heard both sides.
Okay, sure. And I appreciate everyone's patience. This is the first meeting that I'm chairing, so bear with me. Okay, well, that would be terrific then, Brian, if you don't mind going ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. I just wanted to, I don't have any smoking gun or any big revelation to make here. It's all in the report that I provided to you folks. Officer Kaufman, dispatch received the call. Officer Kaufman was the one that responded. That's the way we set it up, because before, in the old system that Jill mentioned, it could be hours before somebody from code enforcement was available to go check out the complaint. And by that time, frankly, cannabis odor is very fleeting. It may hit hard, but it may be gone in 15 or 20 minutes or less. Or it may linger for hours. We never know. So the police have the ability to respond much faster than code enforcement. And this was the first time that I followed up on a complaint because all of the previous complaints had come in during nighttime hours. I'm not on duty nighttime, they are. So we rely on code enforcement to verify that there was odor beyond the property line. And that's the test. Is there odor beyond the property line? That's a violation. Yes, we need to try to attribute where that odor came from, but it's unlikely in any case that it's coming from next door neighbors, or it could be definitely coming from another facility. And that's sort of their job. And in the previous two complaints, code officers did go around to 3 commercial and did note that they smelled odor from that facility. So that led to the logical conclusion that Jill is questioning. And I don't have any argument about that. I wasn't there by the time I got there, as I say, odor's fleeting. It's there and it's gone. By the time I got there, I could not detect odor, and I can detect cannabis odor. I'm not nose blind to it. I can detect it. The owner of the home where the complaint originated said they could still detect it, and they may have better olfactory senses than I do. My wife definitely has better olfactory senses than I do. She smells things that I don't even think are on earth, but she can smell them. She's got really good detection capabilities. Maybe should employ her, but I couldn't detect it. But Chris was out and about checking things out, and so we did follow up. We did look at what he had done before. That would be my normal course of action in following up on a complaint if it happens during business hours. Beyond that, that's really all I have to offer. There was definitely odor detected beyond the property line. The logical conclusion was that it came from 3. It appears that there was no particular source. And in some of the previous complaints, they saw a door open or they smelled it at the building. So again, that was my account. We issued the 3rd complaint. I notified them. And so from my perspective, because verified is not a defined term, even though it appears however many times the counselor said it appeared in the ordinance, it's not a defined term. So verified is, do you smell it beyond the property line? If you do, there's an odor complaint. It's verified. The next test is, where did it come from? But that's not really part of the verification. The verification is, was there odor beyond the property line? It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment on this?
Before we leave, I do have a question for Mr. Longstaff.
Oh, yeah, I have questions actually for everybody as well.
Okay, Mr. Longstaff, you've worked with Mr. McNeil for 3 years, on this project. And during that time, have you made recommendations to him regarding odor remediation, through the exhaust system?
We've talked about possible solutions, but I'm not an engineer. I don't have any concrete background in how to mitigate cannabis odor. We look for the obvious low-hanging fruit. If there's a gaping hole in the side of your building, probably that needs to be plugged. The
Right.
exhaust fan, as Chris did mention, was a big contributor to that. I think they may have solved that based on the fact that we're not getting the volume of complaints, nor have we gotten a complaint since January 6th.
Well, Mr. McNeil did mention that he has invested quite a bit of money in improving the exhaust system. Is this a flat roof or a peaked roof?
Well, for all intents and purposes, it's flat, but it is pitched. It's a prefabricated, pre-engineered steel building. They always
Mhm. And
pitch the roof.
How much, what's the height differential between the top of the exhaust and the top of the highest point on the roof?
I don't know.
It's like goes down, it's probably like 10 feet high and the building's probably 20. One of the things, Brian, he's right, he's not an engineer, nor am I, but you could use some logical sense. We've talked about, asked people about tightening it up and putting it onto the roof.
All right, just one concern I have here is that your voice is not being picked up in the recording. So if you
Well,
could
it'd be
please
good if
step
you
up.
direct, just let's direct questions at me and then direct
That's
questions
fine.
at him and.
Yeah. so
Yeah,
if you just-
Instead of
let's do it that
going
way.
on.
So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so can we next go to Officer Kaufman, and then if anybody on the board has questions for him, anyone else? So let me start. Do you recall the weather on January 6th?
Yes, it was mostly sunny, partly cloudy, I do believe.
Was it cold?
I can't recall if it was cold. I spent most of the day in my cruiser following up on other calls.
Was it the kind of day where windows would be open in a house?
Honestly, I can't recall.
Was it the kind of day where windows would be open in a car?
At the time, I had my windows down, and I had stayed in the area for a good 10, 15 minutes. I didn't find the temperature to be too unbearable at the time.
Was anyone visibly smoking cannabis outside in the area?
I could not see anyone.
Do you have any way, well, let me ask it a little bit differently. Is there a cannabis facility at 4 Commercial Road?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Please.
Yes, Officer, I do have one question. You did mention earlier that you did not leave your car at all. You were making these observations from within your car? I
Correct.
just want to verify that's what you said.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, all right, so you really had no knowledge about the precise location of the odor?
Correct.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question of you, Attorney Cohen? So, thank you. What's your position about what the standard is by which the town has to verify the odor?
Well, I reviewed the ordinance again today, and I don't disagree with what Brian said. There is no definition of verified complaint. The word verified, like I said, appears in the ordinance 8 times. It requires verifying that odor exists beyond the property line. That is the crux of the issue today, is whose property line? And also the fact, and I can answer your question because I, am, for better or for worse, I also represent the licensee at 4 Commercial. So there is a cannabis cultivation facility at 4 Commercial. I can confirm that for you. That is the problem, is there's no standard attached to verified other than we know what the word verified means. It means that they verified there was an odor. We don't dispute that. Of course, if the officer smelled it, he smelled it. If Brian smelled it, he smelled it. If the neighbor smelled it, they smelled it. The issue is that they didn't verify that it was attributable to 3 Commercial. There would have been very few extra steps to take to do the walk around of 3 and of 4 and to see if maybe you could identify where it was coming from. That's part of what I mean by, while this was sort of given to law enforcement as part of their authority, it was done so without what I think would be important training and information. The fact that the officer doesn't know that there's a cannabis facility at 4 Commercial is a problem. So if law enforcement's going to be involved in verifying odor complaints, I mean, I was able to get a list of Scarborough cannabis establishments today in 5 minutes off the Office of Cannabis Policy website. They should have that information to help them do their job. And when somebody's whole business rides on this verification, it's important. It's important that they get it right. Not that they be perfect, but you have 2 options here potentially. I mean, I think maybe 4 options, because again, there are 2 other facilities, obviously a little further away, but you have 2 immediate options here. And the officer already said he didn't get out of the cruiser. He didn't do a walk around. And so it kind of is what it is. I mean, that's why the communication that when we got all the information from Scarborough, that's why it says what it says, suspected. Logical conclusion, because there was no verification that this odor was attributable to 3 Commercial.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Mr. McNeil, I have just a couple questions for you as well. So since January 6th, 2025, have you installed additional odor remediation of any kind at the facility?
No, I change my filters monthly and I revisited my SOPs with my employees. Because as I stated earlier, when Brian and I walked through, I could see, he may not have noticed it because he wouldn't know what my SOPs are, but I could see that there's fresh cut cannabis flower in the hallway. And not that I think that that's, you know, alone going to be a contributor, but you take every step you can, right? So it shouldn't have been in the hallway as long as it probably was. And so if I caught that and I saw that, when me and him and I walked in, I can assume it was probably going on for the previous 2 hours while they were coming down from the room, right?
Any other questions?
Sure. Mr. McNeil, the equipment that you have installed, to your knowledge, is it similar, the same as the equipment that's at number 4?
I don't know what's at number 4. I've requested a walkthrough just to go see what they're doing, you know, and I've done the same thing at Snow Canning. I haven't managed to find the time to get over there. The equipment that I've installed, you know, to go back to your question, sir, I haven't had a complaint since the first one, right? Like the first complaint is, I have two complaints, it's really one, because the first one was the first one. And so we made the adjustments, and while we're making the adjustments, and within, I don't know, it's probably the same 10 days. Actually, when the appeal happened here, the neighbors went home from this town meeting. I was working on it, called the cops or called whoever. It was verified. It was obviously, we were fixing it. So we talked to Brian and, you know, we discussed like the logical, the reality of it was that it's the same violation. It occurred like so close to each other, and I was fixing the problem that it should have counted as the same violation. So really it's one violation. But if you go by the letter of the ordinance, which rightfully so they should, maybe written a little poorly, I think we can all probably agree on that, then it was a second violation. So fine, it's a second violation. So here we are with my third violation. And I would like to go by the letter of the ordinance. Like verify means to be found true, right? Like verifying that there's odor in this room does not mean that it's me or it's you. It verifies that there's odor in the room. Verifying that there's cannabis odor at the property, whether the officer got out or didn't get out. Sure, smells like weed. Nope, nobody's questioning that he smelt it. The question is it coming from my facility? And you can't tell whether it's coming from my facility sitting in your car at the complainant's property. I would argue that you can't even tell coming from my facility if you drive over to my parking lot, because I border the parking lot abuts. Sit in the parking lot, you're equidistant from my building and from 4, right? So like I would argue that if you follow the letter of the ordinance or at least what it is intended to be, it was not verified, was not to be found true that 3 commercial was the cause of this odor.
Thank you. Mr. Longs.
So-
You
Go ahead,
you
if you
have
want.
questions for us.
Yes, I do. If I may, Mr. McNeil, I just want to put you on record since you're at the mic and
Sure.
on camera. Regarding my initial question about the height of the stack compared to the height of the roof.
Mhm.
And could you please explain
Yeah.
the difference?
Sure, the height of the stack probably blows out a foot or 2 below that, right? And the height of the building at that point is probably twice as high. It's probably a 20-foot ladder to get up that. The building goes along and then it steps up another probably 10 feet at the back of the building. I've been on top of the first part many, many times. As a matter of fact, my next step, one of my next steps I'm considering is to duct, instead of having that pushed down, to duct that up onto the roof to try to get it above. I've parked a box truck. The only thing I've done since this violation, I've parked a box truck at the end, sort of sideways to try to like just deflect the wind. It's like a, I mean, it's like a shot in the dark, you know what I mean? That's all that is. So that's my next step, but I'm not taking the next step and spending money that I don't have to spend if what I'm doing is working. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I'm willing to do whatever, but I'm not willing to just throw dollars at a problem that may or may not exist.
All right, just a follow-up question on that. Have you investigated as to whether or not there's any kind of testing equipment, available to be able to use in the stack system to detect the presence of, the marijuana?
No, that's one of the big cruxes of the idea of regulating a smell in the air of the world. Like that's the challenge, right? And like that's I don't think anybody thinks it's easy. I think both sides of the argument make great cases, but that was the challenge. So like, there's nothing. There's
Okay.
nothing.
And you do have filters involved. You said that you change monthly.
Every single room that I grow cannabis in has its own filter, and those rooms are self-contained, meaning they're sealed from the inside. Every single room that cannabis lives in, whether it's growing or drying, is in a self-contained room. I have large like filters in the hallways of everywhere, and then the exit is like the exhaust room is its own room too, with my ACs, my equipment in it, and that is sealed. And I came in and had them professionally seal that, so like nothing that's exiting that building should be any bit of cannabis, because it should only be coming from that room. And it's been great for the most part. I haven't, this only January issue has been the only issue, and I can tell you the weather, it was cold
All
out,
right,
you wouldn't be
thank you.
outside.
That helps very much. Appreciate
Right,
it.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions for Mr. Longstaff.
You really need to get your questions while I'm up here the first time. I'm too old to come back.
We're going to work here hard. First off, when one of these facilities opens, there must be, the town must set specific requirements around, is there any requirement around remediating smell or preventing odor?
Yeah, I invited the counselors, not the counselors, the board members to view chapter 1018. It's the Cannabis Licensing Establishment Ordinance, and there's a whole section on performance standards and what's expected in the facility as far as filtration. And that comes from recommendations from a so-called professional person who deals with industrial odors that the town hired. I think Liam, the assistant town manager, hired him some years ago before COVID, I believe, to kind of come up with some recommendations so we could put some sensible things in, reasonably sensible. And as Chris said, odors, it's not like you can see it. Oh yeah, there's a big purple cloud in the air. It's maybe that purple cloud has odor in it, but you can't see cannabis odor. It's just, it's not like it's leaking out of the building onto the ground where you can say, oh, that's where it's coming from. So it's a difficult test, difficult at 10 and 20 snow canning. It's difficult in every place other than the industrial park where there are no residential neighborhoods to smell anything that leaks. So that's what you have.
Okay, thank you. And follow-up question. What was the period of time between the first and the second events, the violations, that the first two were very close together?
Yeah.
And this third violation, and then as part of that,
Right.
was there a follow-up with Mr. McNeil's, with Coastal Remedies to make sure that, yeah, they had completed the steps that they were in the process of doing as far as sealing the building? Was there a separate action taken by the town on that?
Sure. So the first complaint, verified complaint, I believe came in September. The date in September was September 24th. So according to the ordinance, the town notified Chris of that. I think we gave him 15 days to locate and correct that violation, which they did. And they, through Attorney Cohen, sent me a very good report with photographs on what they had done to hopefully remediate. And I don't mean to speak for them, but I think it was a good shot in the dark. It was their best guess at where the problem was, and they did a really good job at sealing up those areas and probably adjusting some standard operating procedures on the way. And that seemed to have resulted in a pretty good thing. The thing is, in that period of 15 days, the second complaint came in. Now, if that complaint had come in within the 24-hour period, it would not have counted as a second complaint. The way the ordinance is written, if two complaints come in within 24 hours, it's one complaint. After 24 hours, even though they're working on it, and God bless them for doing it, but 24 hours had passed, so the ordinance says it's a second complaint. Frankly, I lobbied to say, no, it shouldn't count until after the 15-day period. That's not the interpretation that the town, through legal counsel and others, came up with. So I was overruled on that. I just want to go on record as saying, I think that would have been a logical thing to have in the ordinance. I don't think anybody wants to go back and rewrite this thing again, but that I think would be something that we should do. The thing is, we only gave them the grace period to fix it on the first complaint. Any subsequent complaints, we can immediately take them to court if we want to. We chose to let the 5 strikes, if you will, play out. And hopefully they won't play out. And I think that's a much fairer way of approaching it.
Just one final
please.
question, apologize. It'd be great to have a diagram that shows us the lay of this area. But, you know, I'll ask any of you that have already spoken. From where you were Officer Kaufman,
Well, if I was up there, I would bring it up on
yeah.
the town's GIS system and put it up on the
I'm,
screen. So you all
I'm,
can
I'm
see.
I'm just wondering, as the crow flies from the officer's vehicle to number 3 and the officer's vehicle to number 4, how much of a difference in distance are we talking about? I mean, is it, yeah.
To the building,
Yeah, from where the cruiser was parked, where the smell was detected, or from the fence, the property line. Let's take the closest point of the property line to number 4 and the closest point of the property line to number 3.
Yeah,
Is it?
I really don't know. I would say probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood, from the street to the back property line that separates 3 commercial with the odors
Scale.
origination complaint.
So this is the front. That's 3, this is 4.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah,
is-
we're looking at the map that was
this
sent out
is- This is,
with the PDF file,
yeah, so it's, okay.
which we're not looking at that. We're looking at what was sent out in the packet.
Was it in the packet?
Well, I'm not sure it's in the packet because I didn't even look at the packet.
Yeah, it wasn't in the packet.
It's not in the
Yeah.
packet.
Yeah,
But-
so is it possible, where is the complainant's house?
Well, if you zoom in there. So
That's
Yeah.
3.
if you want to just click that thing out of the way, Helen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the building with the 2 sections, the dark colored roof and the lighter colored roof,
Sure.
that's 3 commercial. 4 commercial is planned south from that. The whitish colored roof, that's 4 commercial. The property is one of those 3 properties that abuts for 3 commercial, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Immediately to,
that's, okay.
okay.
So like they're in the tunnel, you see the wind tunnel that we're talking about, that's what we're talking about.
All right.
Yeah, actually, the property next to them, south of them, would be more in the tunnel than them,
Yes.
so. But they're further away from 4 commercial too, and that goes to our reasonable conclusion that that's where the odor came from.
Yeah, sure. Well, go up to the podium, please. I just ask you to keep your remarks brief, but yes, please go ahead.
This is where my grow ends right here. This is their grow right here. So when you're in this parking lot right here, I can smell cannabis. I walk over here, I smell it. I walk over here, I don't smell it. The wind blows right here, right?
Don't mark on the screen.
Sorry. Right here,
I'll
have to
cite you for another violation.
right there. So it's like, here's my grow, here's their grow. Just because my building's closer to their building doesn't mean that's the grow. The grow is right there and right there.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, any other questions from the board? Okay, public comment is closed.
Should read the public comments if they get it.
Oh.
So there were some written comments that came in.
Right.
Oh, yes. Do I need to read those into the records? Acknowledge them? Okay. And I'm sorry, were these in the board materials? Yeah, I have a copy of this. I don't think this is in the board materials I have.
Yeah, just
All right, thank you.
briefly,
Okay.
we're running long here.
Indeed. So, public comment from Shane Chanpimal. He resides at 18 Pondview Drive in Scarborough, which abuts the facility at 3 Commercial. He's trying to defend. He understands that this correspondent wants to hearsay. He says that he did notice the odor at his residence, and he recalls seeing the Scarborough police officer parked in the street in front of his home the same day. I cannot see any merit to an approval of the appeal of this complaint. So he's urging the board to deny this appeal. That was received on Wednesday, March 12th. That's today. The other comment is from Paula O'Brien, email received yesterday. And Miss O'Brien, she is the complainant. She says that she has some characterizations of the complaints that she's made in the past, and she says that, emphasizes that the complaints are, that the smell is affecting her. And she asks the board not to disregard the third verified complaint. Any other public comments? Okay, public comment period is now closed. All right, well, so time now for us to deliberate. I consider this quite a, let me just start by saying I'll just go ahead without giving anyone else a chance to go first. I think this is quite a close call. I am inclined to deny the appeal and to uphold the determination that there was a violation. I don't want to handcuff law enforcement when they are responding to these types of complaints and make them feel like they have to jump through a lot of hoops to verify a complaint. As I see it, a verification is pretty simple. I don't think that this is like a beyond a reasonable doubt type standard. I think it's you show up and you smell cannabis and you have verified the smell, and then it's just a question of what is the reasonable source of the smell. And I don't think we have to eliminate the possibility that it's coming from 4 Commercial in order to find that the town has been reasonable in determining that the source was 3 Commercial. So I consider this a close call, but that's where I come down. I open it up to my fellow board members for their thoughts.
I'll start.
Please.
Yes, I agree. It's a tough call. That said, I think there were some mistakes made in this process in terms of identifying the specific location. And that concerns me. Not to place blame, but I think that it's important to avoid letting a third violation go forward and putting this business in potential jeopardy. So, I'm inclined to err on the side of protecting the business and to give them the opportunity to move forward and to continue to make improvements to their operation. And also for the city to come up with better processes in the future for dealing with these kinds of complaints. Not that there were any specific issues or any fault to be placed on anybody by the officer or by Mr. Longstaff. I just think that this is something that's very new, and we just need to, the town needs to do a better job in education, as Attorney Cohen pointed out, and I think that we can't ignore that. It's not to, again, this is because it's new, means that we really have to look at this in terms of, have we done everything possible in terms of being able to make the system work as well as it can? And I have to say at this point, no, it's an opportunity though. When there's an issue like this, it creates an opportunity to do better in the future. And that's the way I see it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Just a couple of thoughts. as I listened to all of the discussion, this evening, it appears to me that we have a business on the one hand that has done everything that the town required them to open. Seems to have taken the appropriate steps along the way where issues have been identified to try and address those issues and in a timely manner. But on the other hand, the town has kind of placed the business in a really tough position with, it seems to me, how the ordinance is written and how it's enforced. And I do agree that, you know, it's difficult to identify exactly where it's coming from. But as was done in this case, it seems reasonable. It has to, you know, it seems reasonable that it would be the closest facility. And we know in the past, from the past violations, that there was in fact an odor coming from this facility. All of that said, I think it's a tough situation for everybody involved, whether it's the business, the officer in this case that's trying to identify the smell and where it's coming from, and then the code enforcement officer. And that also puts this board in a difficult position because, you know, we've got to finding a fact based upon what's written and as I understand it, right? What's written in this
Mr. Chair.
regulation.
Yeah, so I actually don't think we need to make findings of
Exactly.
fact.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think we just either approve the appeal or we don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, we do have to make
No.
findings of fact? Oh, we do,
Yeah.
okay. All right, well,
So just to conclude
yeah.
so as a board, we're supposed to, my understanding is everything that comes in front of us is finding a fact. And
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's the record from which we can draw
Yes.
findings, but I think we do have to make findings.
I think we can make a finding. I think what I'm struggling with is, as I sit here, I struggle with saying it came from his business. Even though as Mr. Bork said, I don't place blame on anybody. I think everybody's done well here, but I really struggle. It's a difficult decision. It's a close decision. But if I have to err on one side or another, you know, I'd err on in this case, on the side of the complainant. And yeah, it's.
Mr. Campbell, any thoughts?
I mean, I think, to be totally honest, the only thing that bothers me is that we didn't determine whether there was also smell coming from a facility that was so close. Knowing that there's also a growth facility right there, maybe the smell was coming from there. I would like to weigh on the favor of the officer who said that they did smell it. I believe that. However, if you never got out of your car, how can you determine between the two facilities where the smell was coming from? Yes, the smell may have been present, but where did the smell come from? And we can't come to a determination either way with that.
So should we vote on whether we think the appeal should be approved first and then make findings of fact based on that?
No, I think you want to make findings, draw your conclusions from.
Okay.
So
So I suspect, well, I think that I am going to be on the losing side of voting to approve the board's findings. So I will leave it to the three members here to propose findings of fact and conclusions of law on for us to tee up to vote.
Chair, if it helps.
Yeah.
I always do. I've drafted some findings. They're just draft findings. You can change them, add to them, just to help get the conversation started and before, you know, hopefully, and they're just facts from the.
Where are they?
Yeah, they're here.
Okay, all right.
The officer's statements. And that will help you kind of some conclusions. I didn't draw the conclusion.
Okay.
But I pretty much got to find it.
if I could.
Yeah, please.
So, Mr. Longstaff's, as he noted, we have some staff comments. I'll just kind of some key points
Please, yeah.
and then sort of restate something that I touched on earlier. The first is that the ordinance states that the licensees, this cannabis smell shouldn't be detectable beyond the property boundary. All right. We don't know where the smell was coming from, but there was definitely an odor that was detected, right? So that part of the standard was met from my perspective. There was a smell. It was clearly emanating from somewhere. It could be a business or it could be someplace else. The second piece is that the ordinance can be enforced by code enforcement officer, law enforcement officer, or another municipal designee. In this case, it was Officer Kaufman. So we've met that standard. The next standard, Section 11C, says that after a fifth violation, and I won't go through all of this, but we know that this would be the third violation. The fourth piece, Section 13B, states that that there was also a statement in the ordinance that says that the actual origin doesn't need to be pinpointed, right? We can use sort of best judgment, I guess, in layman's terms, right?
So, yeah, and I think we may be, or the remainder of the board may be overthinking that, saying the findings could just be as simple as the town has failed to verify the source of the odor.
Yeah. So I think, and I think this is it, that on those first three I mentioned, I think the town did what they were supposed to do. But on the last one, the ordinance states that any order, requirement, decision, or determination made or failure to act in the enforcement of this ordinance by the CEO or police chief is appealable to the zone of appeals. And it's on that basis, and basically that on any of these things that somebody can come in front of us and say, I don't think they met the standard. I really think that's where the town falls down, that in this particular case, they can't really pinpoint where it's coming from, and it could be coming from multiple commercial sources within that area. And for me, that's where the whole thing sort of falls apart.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? So I guess I would entertain a motion to approve findings of fact consistent with what you've just articulated.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Doreen, can you call the roll on the vote to approve findings of fact and conclusions of law consistent with the premise that the town has not verified that, or the town failed to verify that the appellant was the source of the odor?
David Bork,
Aye.
Cal Noonan,
No.
Joe Doherty,
Aye.
and Michael.
Aye.
Findings of fact and conclusions of law. The motion passes. So I think the next step then is we will have a written version of this next month for the whole board to approve. Is that right? Okay. So, but on that basis, I think I can now say the appeal has been approved. It's been upheld or is granted. It's been granted. So, okay, excellent. Thanks everyone for coming. We can move on to the remainder of our agenda for the evening. Okay, what's next? Bees. We're going to move to appeal number 2769. This is a special exception appeal by Timothy Morris, 11 Asselin Drive. Is the appellant here? Can you go ahead and just, so you said,
Why don't I tee this up?
yes,
Would
please.
that be
Yeah.
good? I know we went away from that, with Peter, but we used to do this for most of the appeal. So I'm just going to tee this up a little bit. Tim Morris lives in an R2 district. In the R2 district, commercial agriculture is a special exception use. He wants to start selling produce that he grows at his residence, at farmers markets and other places. In the ordinance, that makes it a commercial agricultural use. You could have a hobby garden, grow your own vegetables and sell what you don't use as, seasonally at your residence, but that's not what he wants to do. He wants to take it off the premises and sell it to other markets. And so that's a commercial ag. He wants to start an LLC. And so that's why he's here, and he's provided some details about how he wants to do that. And he'll elaborate on that for you later. But it has to meet those special exception criteria, the A through I criteria. And there are some performance standards for commercial ag, which don't really apply because he's not actually proposing a processing facility or animal husbandry.
Terrific. So do you mind just, for each of the standards that a special exception permit needs to meet, just briefly walking us through, your application?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you mind pulling it up on the screen? And I can kind of go through it item by item. Thank you, Mr. Longstaff. Do you want to go through that top section where it talks about the attachments?
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
have a suggestion that there is a section here that hasn't been filled out. Description of a proposed special exception. And I think it might be helpful to have Mr. Morris, just give us a verbal description of exactly what you're proposing.
Happy to do it. The description of the special exemption is what follows, directly under that header, sir. But yeah, I can give you just a quick overview. So we live on a 1/4 acre lot, and as Mr. Longstaff pointed out, in the town of Scarborough, you need to file, per our town ordinances, you need to file an exception if I'm doing any kind of commercial growth, which in our town is defined in part by taking produce off the property to sell. So if I grow a tomato, even if it's in a pot and I put it in a bicycle and pedal it to the farmer's market, I'm considered a commercial grower in the town of Scarborough. So that's why I'm filing the exception. We don't want to sell on site. As Mr. Longstaff pointed out, we're in an R2 area. I have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and another one cooking. We don't particularly want any more traffic on our street, nor do I think our neighbors would be supportive of any more traffic on our street. So that's the intention behind selling off-site. So nothing will be sold physically at our address, but everything fits. It would look like a home garden to anybody. We're using our existing home garden. I've turned a few more beds in areas of our lot that are not really noticeable from the street. We're going to have a beehive this year, and that might grow, but it would be within what is currently allowable for apiaries at residential houses. Scarborough, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Longstaff, but Scarborough doesn't have any ordinances against bees in the town. And as far as state law goes, per my site, I just have to have them licensed. So under a normal license for an apiarist, I could have as many hives as I wanted to on that site, but that's not our intention. I don't intend to fill my small residential neighborhood with bees. We're going to have a few small hives, and they're being placed in such a way, and it talks about this in the form, that directs the bees up and away from the rest of the neighborhood. So the impact to anyone on the street would just be their backyard tomatoes and lilacs are going to look nicer than usual. They'll just have a couple more pollinators than what they would normally have. But that's kind of the crux of it. It's a bunch of vegetable gardens that would be normal for a home gardener, a couple beehives. We just intend to be selling the produce off-site as to not have any traffic at our house. I like to garden. My small children like to garden, so this is kind of a fun exercise for them and I. I'm a stay-at-home dad during the week. I'm a photographer by trade. So this is kind of what we do Monday through, yep, there's a picture of the lot. So this is kind of what we do Monday through Friday. We like to play outside in the dirt. We don't have television, so this is kind of our fun little hobby business. But sorry, Mr. Longstaff, I don't mean to make a correction. We are not intending to file an LLC. So a big distinction there, an LLC would be needed if we were going to have actual employees. I have no intention to have any employees of this at all. It's going to be just me and the girls, my wife. There will be no additional traffic on the small residential neighborhood that would be indicative of like a traditional like commercial farm per se.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Oh,
Yes,
please.
sir.
So I just want to verify there wouldn't be any farm animals at all, specifically goats
No, no goats and
or any other farm animals?
no animal husbandry. So we do currently have quail in accordance with the town chicken ordinance. But it's less than 10 and my wife hates the quail, so we will not be going past that current number.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
So Brian, can we ask the appellant to walk through each of the special? So Mr. Morris, do you mind just for special exception standard A, just describing why you meet that, or why you believe you meet that criteria?
Also not create any unhealthful.
This is about the proposed use not creating unsanitary or unhealthful conditions.
Yeah, kind of like how it talks about in that paragraph. There's no sewage concern with any of this. I'm not bringing in, no intention to bring in mass amounts of manure or anything that would cause a health and safety hazard to anyone in the area. We're not gonna, actually kind of the opposite emissions to the air. It takes out emissions, just vegetable growth, healthy growth, that kind of thing. There's gonna be a flower component, so the air will actually smell a little bit nicer. And as far as design and operation goes, the intention behind this is to be as aesthetically pleasing from the road as possible. So if you pull up the, thank you. If you pull up the town's GIS map, you'll notice that our lot is situated right next to a corner lot. So there's already a vegetable garden on the lot abutting ours facing the road. Ours is going to be designed in such a way that if you were to look at it, it's a scary picture. If you were to look at it from the street, it would look as if it were a flower bed. So there's ways we're going to intentionally do this through corporation design. And then if you're looking at the map in particular, so I'm just going to hold the map up. Does the camera facing me? This section of garden right here, it's in front of the house towards the road, is going to be intentionally designed to be aesthetically pleasing. So the way plants are placed, there's going to be flower borders, things like that, that make it look like basically a large flower bed in front of the house. And then any kind of like quote unsightly growth, things that are meant to be just more commercial. So like raspberries are going to be back here. They don't look pretty, they're thorny. Anything that would be otherwise unsightly will be kind of back here tucked away where our vegetable garden previously existed. This was actually all mass undergrowth until last year when we dug it out, turned it over and turned it into garden. But yeah,
Good.
that's kind of that. Does that hit section A?
Yeah, thank you. Can you discuss why you believe that the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when adding to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity?
Yeah, it's gonna be no additional vehicles, like at all. The only thing the neighbors will probably notice is I might pedal. I have a 3-wheeled bicycle that I put the 2 kids in, and I've got a trailer behind it. We're probably gonna take that in and out of the neighborhood on Sundays to bring things to the farmer's market. But that one trip would be the only additional traffic this would cause to the neighborhood. There will be no on-site sales. No one's allowed to come pick up produce. I don't want strangers at my house around my kids. So we know like farm stands, anything like that, no employees. It's just people who already live there, just growing some tomatoes.
Thank you. Moving to criteria C, can you explain why you believe that the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which will be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood, or require a substantially greater degree of municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's the people who currently live in the neighborhood, continuing to live in the neighborhood and just growing more produce during the day. It's kind of summing up that.
Is there any risk to the bees?
No, so I talked to the Maine State apiarist on this. Great question. It's unfortunate the legal counsel left. But there has been no cases in the state of Maine that she is aware of any kind of negligence from, I'm going to say, bee attack on people walking by. So with that said, I did talk to a personal injury lawyer about this. And he also kind of substantiated that there is no legal risk liability around bees. And again, the bees could just be for hobby. In this case, it's roughly the same amount. So where that hive location, the bee yard is indicated inside that yellow block. So the red circles right around it indicate lilacs. Those lilac bushes are currently in excess of 12 feet tall. That encompass it all the way around. So what that does is it causes the insect to fly up to an elevation of 12 feet. 15 feet is cruising altitude for an Italian honeybee, which is what we're going to have. So once they get to that height, their objective at that point is to get to finding nectar. And typically speaking, they don't like to remain, it's in that area, that's an outdated image, but yeah. They don't like to remain near their hives, so they like to spread out. So there's marshland within a 5-mile radius of this property. They're likely going to end up going there to help collect honey, that kind of thing from that zone. But things we're going to do just to kind of mitigate some of those risks, we are going to put up signage to indicate that there are bees there. So that would mitigate any neighbor kids from like, really, they're not going to, and when we talk about bees, bees kept for domestic purposes, like the Italian honeybee, are extremely docile. So reason bees would attack you if my wife walks over to the hive and like kicks it over, they'd be pretty ticked and they'd probably attack. But other than that, they don't really want to. Honeybees are unique in that when they sting you, the stinger comes off into a person and they perish. So they really don't want to sting mammals. So to get to my point, we're going to put signage up that there are bees in there and to stay out. But again, it's also like, it's a pretty thick hedge of lilac. You'd have to intentionally want to walk in there to touch the hive. And as far as passersby on the street, it's the same risk as you would have walking down any other residential neighborhood in Scarborough. We have pollinators, bees in our neighborhoods already. We do intend to have some EpiPens on site just as like a good Samaritan precaution. In case someone were to accidentally get stung, we'd have the ability to help if we could.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you explain why you believe that your application, that the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies?
Yeah, so we intend to eventually, it's in our long-term plan to be organic. So as part of that, we have plans in place to preserve soil, and that includes erosion. So our planning practices, crop rotations, all that will be done in such a way that's respectful to the ground.
Thank you. Can you describe to the board why you believe the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development?
Absolutely. Mr. Longstaff, would you mind clicking the GIS tab? So if you move over to the lot right next to mine, this is their existing vegetable garden. So it already faces the street on the same side ours is on. So it'd be very congruent for our neighborhood just to see more additional garden on that side of the street. So it's pretty consistent with existing uses.
And Brian, is this in a shoreland zone? Mr. Morris, do you have sufficient right, title, or interest in the site to be able to carry out the proposed use?
Yes,
Are you the owner?
yes.
Do you have the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions that the board might impose?
Yes. Technical and financial ability. Yeah. So I grew up farming. It's kind of a dream. We always talked about having a large farm, but and we bought a house with a 1/4 acre lot. So now we're going to do a micro farm.
Can you describe why you believe the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation?
Yeah, it's gonna operate during daylight hours. We don't intend to have any late night pumpkin parties or anything.
Great. Any public comment on this? Okay.
Yeah, we had plenty of public comment. Did you want to do counselor comment first, or did you want to do public comment?
Oh, well, I meant from the crowd. I hear nothing. I didn't realize there were written comments on this one.
Yeah, so when you open the public comment period, if anybody wants to get up and speak, they can, and then we would read in any written comments.
Okay.
So if you want to gavel in the public comment, but usually you entertain comments or questions from board members to the applicant. And then we would open the public comment.
Okay.
Period.
Any, any questions from the board? Please.
Yes, I do. You know, I've been through the letters that have come in. I know that's going to be coming up very shortly here, but it appears that there are several neighbors who are not at all happy with what you're proposing. And that's understandable. I mean, people tend to be reluctant to have change in their neighborhoods. But I just want to ask a question. Have you taken the time to talk to your neighbors at all and let them know what you're proposing here and get their input and reaction and so forth to, you know, be able to put together something that you've got the support of the neighbors?
I did, sir. So we talked to the folks across the street. We talked to the two lots that directly abut ours. So that would be the lot directly to the left and directly behind. I spoke to them. They were pretty excited about it. I spoke to a few other neighbors around the circle, the ones that I'm in pretty good contact with, and they didn't have any concerns. Yeah, I know that there are a few people who had some concerns and questions, and I heard about it through the grapevine. I wasn't able to get a hold of them in person. I encouraged people I heard from to tell them to reach out to me, and no one's spoken to me directly. I'm home basically 24 hours a day. Yeah, except on Saturdays. So I'm reachable, I'm attainable. I like to think I'm relatively friendly. I'm usually outside even in my front yard. So it's pretty easy to find me if people had concerns, but no one wanted to bring them to me. So
Well, that's part of what's happening here tonight. So, you know, we'll get into that. Thank you.
Any others? Okay. All right. Then you may sit down. And at this point, do I read the received
Well,
comments in?
We're going to
Now
open
I-
public comments.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anyone in the room that would like to get up and speak, so.
I'll open public comments. Okay. Well,
So, yeah, now you can go to the written comments.
all right. So we did receive some written comments on this appeal. We received one from Dwayne Britton. He lives at 19 Asselin Drive, has since 1967. He opposes the appeal. I think on aesthetic grounds, it's fair to say. Received an appeal, excuse me, a comment from Mr. Roman Josephlak, Fiak.
Your guess is as good as mine. I'm sorry.
Sounds
I
right.
apologize to Mr. Josephiak for mispronouncing his name. He opposes the beekeeping operation. He's concerned about bee stings. Public comment from Merle White Jr. of 9 Asselin Drive. Concerned about the size of the parcel and that concerned about the bees and concerned that the noise that he generates may result in bees becoming agitated. Does not believe that the farm setting is a good fit for this neighborhood. Public comment from Sonia White of 9 Asselin Drive, another neighbor. She's lived in the neighborhood 60 years and she is concerned about traffic. She wants to keep the neighborhood quiet. And she's concerned about the curb appeal, concerned about the bees stinging, and she opposes the appeal.
There was also Connie and Roger Weed.
Oh, is that not in my packet?
Connie and Roger Weed, I believe they live at, well, doggone it. I don't have their address, but they're across the street.
18 Astle Drive. Oh, no, that's
No,
subject to.
they're at 25 Aslan Drive. And they didn't have so many objections as they did questions, which I tried to answer, and you've answered some of those tonight. I know zero about beekeeping, okay? And yeah, if you'd like, I know zero about beekeeping, but they were concerned about the bees because her husband is allergic and is 85 years old, so he has some health concerns, and that was a concern of theirs. I Googled like people do, and I came up with some University of Maine stuff and some stuff from Delaware and some other sources that was pretty interesting to read. And you talked about how you can do things to make bees go up instead of sideways, which kind of gets them out of pedestrians' ways and helps those kinds of things. They talked about different species or species, the right word of bee. Some are docile, some are more aggressive. And so it sounds like you're really going for a more docile species of bee. So it sounds like you've addressed a lot of their concerns that they had, but they did kind of go on record as being concerned, but not necessarily opposed.
If you don't mind, I can speak to that for a second. So the fun thing about honeybee production, so Italian honeybees are not native to Maine, nor are most honeybees that people would keep intentionally for their honey. We effectively already keep bees on this property. We have two very large ground hive populations. They're not intentional. These are native bees. These bees would sting you just by seeing you. So the way the barbs work on bees that are native to Maine, the stinger of the barb can go into your skin and come back out without pulling the sting sac from the bee. So that means the bee can not only sting you once, but they can keep coming back and getting you. It's why like we have the associations with like yellow jackets, for example, are a really common one. And those are native to Maine. So the fun thing about bringing in this type of variety to the area is it will not only are they a friendlier bee, whereas they don't want to come from mammals, but the way their stingers work, who I talked earlier, they would die if they stung you. Yeah, if they sting another bee, though, for example, a ground bee, their stinger can come back out. So they don't like competition, so they won't allow another variety of bee to live close to them. So the two ground hives that we've been trying to get rid of since we moved in will be neutralized by the incoming hive that we're intending to get. So that's a bit, and the bees are also just, I want to throw this out there for just absolute transparency. The bees are on this application as a courtesy. The reason to file this permit was to sell produce. I put the bees on there because I also just wanted to, as a courtesy, notify the neighbors that they were coming. Per the town of Scarborough, I don't need anything to have bees on our lot, and Mr. Longstaff can correct me. I've done the paperwork with the state just to verify that. So the bees are going to be there. It's just whether or not it's a hobby or we actually sell the honey. And any of the neighborhood, a couple of those neighbors have reached out to me probably since they made those comments and have asked, and I've talked to them about it. And people are always a little hesitant, as a lot of beekeepers will tell you when they find out hives are coming into the area. A lot of people won't tell folks that they're going to have hives because you don't really see the impact. But I just wanted to notify people so they were aware. And in the case of the weeds, it will be a conversation my wife and I probably have with them. I don't want to put anyone's lives at danger.
I believe they're out of state right now, but maybe
The Dwayne is.
Dwayne's
Dwayne lives in
that's
Florida, because
right.
also
Mr.
I
Dwayne.
couldn't get a hold of him. But the weeds are in state.
Okay.
We just never see them outside their house. So it may be a conversation I have with him. I obviously don't want to put one of my neighbors' lives in danger for a hobby. So
Can I ask one question, Mr. Chair? Sorry for interrupting. How much experience do you have with beekeeping?
0.
Okay. Are you obviously educating yourself? You've given us a lot
Yeah,
of
so the
information.
kids and I have read several books. I'm a member of the Cumberland County Beekeeper Association. This will be our first year professionally keeping bees. I have a mentor who also lives in Scarborough who will be coming
That was
over.
my next question.
Yes, who will
You
be
know,
coming over
people.
frequently to make sure this is done right.
Okay.
The other thing in the state of Maine, we do have to register with the state, and that means a state inspector has to come every year and inspect the hives to make sure proper management is being taken.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's it. That's it for the written comments.
okay. All right, can I close the public
You can
comment?
close the public-
now? All right,
yes.
public comment closed. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Ryan? So, is it your understanding that he is correct, the appellant is correct, that the permit, there is no permit needed to have hobby bees in the town of Scarborough?
There is no local regulation that specifically calls out beekeeping.
Okay.
So in our accessory agriculture performance standard in section 9, I forget the number, but anyway, it's gosh, 9R or 9S, I believe. Anyway, it spells out certain things. On lots of 10,000 square feet, you can have chickens, no more than 10 chickens. On lots of 20,000 square feet, you can have more chickens, for example. On lots of less than 15,000 or something, you can have a male chicken, a rooster. It talks about when you can have larger animals, such as goats and pigs. You have to be on, I think it's 2 acres. So all of those things sort of prevent any kind of farm animal keeping on this property.
Mhm.
In that performance standard, there's nothing that mentions about beekeeping or insects or anything else. So
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
in my interpretation of our ordinance, there is nothing that says he cannot have beekeeping.
Yeah, so this would just allow him to produce honey to sell.
Well, as he said,
And
he's
do other-
bringing it into his application as a courtesy because he may sell honey. He's going to have to get a food handler's permit from the town
Right.
if this is approved.
Yeah.
As other honey producers do and other food producers do, that will be part of the, the follow-up.
Okay.
Should you approve this application? But yes, he's free to have the beekeeping. Obviously, I think it's sensible that, he's not putting 20 hives on this lot. I mean, it's a pretty small lot. Sounds like he's operating or proposing to operate to scale. So,
Yeah.
which is helpful.
Okay. Any discussion among the board? I went first and was promptly outvoted, so I'm gonna let somebody else go first this time.
I'll jump in. So, with regard to the bees, yeah, I can, obviously I can see number of neighbors have expressed concern. But I've actually got some experience with a neighbor that had a beehive, and it was a fair bit of a nuisance. He and I talked on a regular basis, but it did cause a nuisance. And so while I guess my focus for this is I don't know if anything should be in here about bees. Because with condition C, proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different than those created by existing uses, unless there are a bunch of people with beehives in the neighborhood. If I would see this as part of a business, having a beehive, at the very least, I'd want it limited to a single beehive and not more than that. At the very most, I'd say just remove it from here, keep it as a hobby and eliminate it from the business altogether. That would be my recommendation. Because I really do believe if it's in here as part of what we finally approve, I have a hard time saying that it doesn't create safety problems, given that in the neighborhood of this size, in a neighborhood where kids are riding their bikes and they're walking around, families are walking around, people are pushing strollers. All it takes, and I know they're docile, my neighbor had very docile bees as well. All it takes is one bee with the wrong person being stung. And so to me, you have the right to have it, but I would remove it from this. Otherwise, I have a hard time saying that they need that requirement.
I can appreciate the fact that you even mentioned the base unit. I think that was very, forward. I think if that's the only rebuttal, then, I'm sorry. I think if that's the only rebuttal, then I don't really have an issue with it. However, as far as the neighbors that are around, if they don't like bees and they don't want extra bees, I mean, I would feel a certain type of way that now we're gonna harvest more bees, in such a close facility, or vicinity, I should say. In this regard, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I would have a problem with it personally. But if the bees, he already has bees on his property, and they're more aggressive bees, and he's letting everyone know, here comes some more bees. So, I mean, I'm kind of torn right there, me personally.
Mr. Bork.
Yeah, I can add to that. I better agree, with Joe. And there is a concern about the bees, and I'd like to point out too that this is a very densely populated neighborhood. When you have lots that are a quarter of an acre, neighbors are right on top of each other. And to have multiple beehives like this is a big concern, and that seemed to be the primary objection. There were others, of course, but this is the primary objection that we had from neighbors. And I appreciate the fact that the applicant has spoken with neighbors, but at the same time, I have a hard time saying that public safety is not a problem, and would certainly have a hard time supporting that particular criterion.
Question for you, Brian. I assume, but don't know, that we can, I guess it would be the same as putting a condition, strike a portion of the application, or I guess it would be basically putting a condition that will grant the variance, except, or the special exception, except as to the selling of honey.
I guess if you put it that way, I guess I have a problem with that.
How would you put it? If
I
you're
wouldn't
trying
put
to-
it, I wouldn't put it anyway. I would just stay away from it if you're asking me, but if you were to put, I was afraid you were gonna say I'd put a condition in no beehives, but you'd actually be taking away a right
Right.
that he would otherwise be
Right.
entitled to, which I don't think is a wise condition to put on any approval.
Right.
If you want to strike the sale of honey, then why would you even have honey bees? I don't know. I mean, isn't the production of honey kind of the point of having them, or would you?
Well, that would be the idea, though, to basically say, have your farm. But to the extent you're gonna have bees, I mean, obviously you can have bees if you want, but you can't have a commercial bee operation. I guess what I'm saying is I'm inclined to go in that direction, but I would appreciate your expertise in sort of how that could be, how we would paper that.
Yeah, I don't have a good response for that. I think you should just go forward with whatever you want to do and see where the chips fall, because I don't have any suggestions for you.
So
Sorry.
he's got the right as a
Right.
citizen to
Right. So
have a beehive.
right,
And doesn't seem like there are any limits on it.
right.
But the moment we grant him whatever's in here, including the beehive currently, with no limitation on it, just he can have bees, it becomes part of a business license, correct? An approved,
Well-
and maybe business, yeah, he's got to go to the town, you said after this?
Well,
He'd have to do that anyway.
Right.
But we would be giving him a special exception.
An exception.
Do commercial beekeeping on this lot.
Right. And for, yes, exactly. And so if we just.
I don't know if I would frame it as commercial beekeeping. I think he just brought it up because he might sell the honey.
Right.
And you're saying you don't want him to sell the honey, but it's really the bees that you have a problem with,
Right.
not the honey.
But
But
if-
so you're telling him you can't
if-
sell the
if-
honey.
if-
The honey's not the problem.
If he has a
What
hive,
I don't want to do though is I don't want to bless any kind of commercial beekeeping operation on the lot. So that's where I'm sort of like, I'm trying to get there and I don't. know
Yeah,
if
so,
that's-
so one suggestion was to strike the bee hive from the proposal, but then allow him to come in the back door as a hobby and have beehives. So it's sort of like the poison
Yeah.
fruit. We've already heard he wants to do bees. We know he's gonna do bees. Striking it from the special exception doesn't really accomplish anything.
I think there may be supposedly some type of contingency about, a quantified limitation on the bee harvesting itself. Because we know the motivation is the selling of the honey, which we can't do without harvesting the bees. That's not going anywhere. A contingency plan in regards to controlling the amount of population that's grown due to these new added bees makes more sense. If that's a thing.
No, I mean, see, I hear you, but because he would have the ability to have as many bees as he wants anyway.
Mhm.
The question that is before us is, do we give him a special exception to have this hobby farm? Basically to produce agricultural products on this lot for sale.
Mhm.
So I see no issue at all with the application, except the production of honey. Only, it's not because I have a problem with the honey, it's because I don't want to bless the commercial production of bees at 18 Asselin.
Mhm.
So, I don't think we could say you can only have X number of hives or, some other restriction like that, because that's just not before us. The special exception application is just, can I use this lot for this commercial farming purpose or not?
Can I throw one more thing? I think we really need to move this faster because we're at almost 8:45. and
Oh, well.
We still have 2 more appeals. So,
Well, I mean,
yeah, now I lost my train of
well,
thought.
it is March. Can we carry this over? I mean, the bees aren't coming in for a while, no matter what.
Yeah, I don't know what the
right?
schedule is.
I mean,
It might be, would it be possible for us to table this for another month? What's your schedule? I mean, what's gonna happen? Go ahead. Yeah, go to the mic.
The bees will be on site probably before your next meeting. Just to put that into perspective.
that
There-
is what it is. So,
I remember what I was gonna say. There's always the civil ability. Should a neighbor have a complaint about the bee, they can take him to court.
Right.
He's already discussed personal injury and personal liability. So there's always that. Regardless of what you guys approve, he could still have the bees, right? So if it doesn't go well, there's that. But who's to say it won't go really well? I talked to I did call a former town councilor here in Scarborough who happens to keep bees. And she said she would have no problem with that if putting bees on that lot, on a lot that size. They do it in the cities, in apartments, on roofs and terraces. So it's not like the size of the lot is, from the information I gathered, and I'm not an expert, but it's not like it's impossible to do this and do it well. I just don't know that if he's going to do it well, but he's got a mentor, he's got some things in place. If it doesn't go well, I'm sure the neighbors are going to let him know.
yeah.
I don't know if that helps you.
So I would be eager to hear from my fellow board members. I am inclined to table this appeal, but I'd be happy to hear from others.
I mean, with all due respect, I feel like tabling it is just, the bees are gonna be here. He's already said they're on their way. I
Yeah.
mean, if an issue occurs, then we'll know about it and then further decisions can be made after that. I mean, let the man have his bees.
So you're inclined to vote tonight and to approve?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. Where are you at?
Yeah,
Dave?
I think I could go along with that.
You want to vote tonight and vote to
I
approve?
think we should definitely make a decision tonight, and I would be inclined to approve, given the fact that bees are permitted anywhere in the town.
I agree we should vote.
Okay, well, let's go through and make, proposed findings as to each of the special exceptions criteria. And, Doreen, do we vote, after, to approve the proposed findings after each criteria?
Yes.
We do.
So you
Okay.
quickly go down through, do some findings, vote on each item, and then move quickly to a final up and down vote on
Okay.
on the appeal.
Okay.
And reminder that there's 4 of you. If it's a tie, the appeal fails.
Thank you. Okay. All right, in our tradition of going around, Mr. Bork, do you want to start with,
Sure. The proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by means of sewage disposal emissions to the air or water or other aspects of its design or operation. I think the applicant has shown us that this is true. That the use of raised beds for the the various vegetables and so forth that he's growing, it's not a problem. The location of the raised beds in the front of the yard, I don't think it's a problem at all. There are a lot of other homes that have similar beds. There's really no issue at all regarding unsanitary conditions. When these beds are used properly and watered properly, it should not be a problem.
okay,
Sounds like you addressing erosion.
do we vote? Should we take a vote now on that proposed finding?
Does anybody have anything else to add?
Yeah,
If not,
any discussion on that? No, okay. Can you,
Don't do the call, just raise hand.
oh, okay,
We need to move. We need to move.
getting there. All right, okay, all those in favor of, adopting that proposed finding? Okay. Joe, can you take the next one?
Sure. The proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity. As Mr. Morris has told us, he'll have no employees. It'll be he and his family. There'll be no additional traffic, cars in and out of the driveway or along the property. And apart from a 3-wheeled bike on a weekend to go to the farmer's market, that's the only additional traffic. So I believe this condition is met.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting that proposed finding? Perfect. Criteria C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood. I'm going to give this one actually to you, Mr. Bork.
Okay. So if you're looking at the impact on the neighborhood, I think the applicant has shown us that, with the proper training and mentoring and so forth, he'll be able to maintain a safe beehive operation. And if you look at the impact it's going to have on the public safety, specifically, any kind of risk to people, I think the risk is minimal, as the applicant has shown. And certainly and the applicant has checked, has researched this to show that it's really an insignificant amount. And also the applicant has discussed this with neighbors, and I would certainly encourage the applicant to continue to do so to help educate them as to what he plans to do.
Any other additions? All those in favor of adopting that proposed finding? I'm a no on this one. Yep.
So,
On this one, I'm a no.
okay, so the appeal fails. I'm just
Yeah,
telling you.
I
A
understand.
tie is a
I-
no, and if
I-
any one of these fails, then the
I-
whole appeal fails.
I understand. And,
Okay.
uh,
I just want to be clear,
Yeah, thank you.
right? Okay. So there's no point, well, I mean, we can continue if you want, but I think at this point, you might want to extend that option to table, but that's up to the applicant.
yeah, and just to explain for the record, you know, at least from my perspective, it's not keeping bees on the property, it's keeping bees on the property with, for commercial purposes. And that to me, based on the information I have in front of me, is a step.
Is there anything else that we need to do to paper this?
Well, Mr. Chair,
When you have, yes,
I think we should give the applicant the opportunity to table and decide whether he wants to proceed.
okay. Mr. Morris, would you like to table your appeal?
So when you say table the appeal, are you looking for me to table this till next month and then refile? Or are you looking for me to table this till next month and then would you like to see, do you want me to bring in the Maine State apiarist? Do you want me to bring in more resources with as the document currently exists? Or would you just like to see bees struck from the document for?
Well, I think you all, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I think the appellant has the opportunity to withdraw his application and then resubmit it with different materials if it's tabled. Is that correct?
If it's tabled, he could come back and, I mean, I think it's incumbent upon you to give some guidance to the applicant as to what tabling is going to do for him. I think those are fair questions. What does the board want to see? Do you want to see the bees struck from the thing?
I'm happy to strike them from the record. Just to
Does
correct you,
anyone have a
sir,
problem
not
with the
to,
vegetables?
not to split hairs,
Because there are
but
killer vegetables out there. Do we have any problems with
But,
those?
so I can tell you, I would vote to approve this without commercial honey production on the lot.
so per this application, at no point does it say commercial beekeeping or commercial honey producing. I just want to make that really clear. That's not in this application at all. The
You-
bees
you-
are mentioned,
Yeah.
but the fact that it is commercial bees is not substantial to this application at all.
No, I
Commercial
understand.
bees can happen without this, but I'm happy to strike those and just do it anyway and not mention on this application for you to approve it.
I think that would be the right, or you can do whatever you want to do, but I would be more inclined to vote in favor of finding that the public safety criteria is met if the application does not include any commercial bee activities. I understand you can have bees as many as you want regardless, but I just don't feel comfortable blessing commercial bee operations.
What, sir, I mean, again, not to split hairs, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not for the zoning committee to bless or deny. That's effectively been blessed by the town not having an ordinance. I don't need to file this for the commercial side of it.
Well, this application includes beekeeping.
Yes, but it does not say commercial beekeeping in this application at any point.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Does the application include the sale of honey?
It does not.
You're saying it does not?
I don't believe sale of honey was mentioned anywhere in here. It's not necessarily my intention to sell honey.
Well-
It did, I mean, during testimony, he did mention the sale of honey.
Yeah, and there are references to
Are-
beekeeping.
Yep, but does not necessarily mean honey. Beekeeping can be just for producing the pollination of the apple trees on site, which is
Absolutely.
a big part of our motivator here.
Yeah, if you
Oh.
need to have bees for that purpose, for pollination, that's way different Okay, and that does not require our approval. But if you want to sell honey, it does. And that would, require, if you want to do it at scale, it's going to require a lot more hives. And on the diagrams that I've seen, the hives there are quite a few hives. Many more than what you would need for the use of just pollination.
So I'd say just to move this along, I mean, either the appeal fails or you could table it and then resubmit it anew.
Happy to table.
Okay, all right. Motion to table at the applicant's request.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Okay, all right. Can I bang the gavel now? Okay. All right, on to our next appeal. This is, if I'm looking at my notes correctly, this is appeal number 2770. This is a variance appeal by Carrie and Alexander Martin, 5 Moores Point Road. And I think I assume the applicants are here, and the contingent from IF&W is here as well for that. Does the appellant, well, actually, should I summarize the application or just let the appellant?
Why don't I tee it up real quick?
Okay.
So yes, this variance appeal 2770, the appellants own a 5.57 acre parcel. It abuts Black Point Road. It's on Moores Point Road, which is a small private road that comes off of Black Point. In order to meet the town's road frontage criteria, apparently when the lot was created, they connected the parcel to a larger piece that abuts Black Point Road that created their 100 feet of required road frontage. They did not have it on Moores Point Road as the lots were created around that. The portion on Black Point does them no good other than to create that 100 feet of frontage. The state of Maine is interested in acquiring that parcel. The Martins are interested in conveying that portion of the parcel to the state so that it can join with the other state lands that they manage, which makes great sense other than it creates a non-conforming lot for the Martins. And that's why they're here with a variance appeal. We looked at all kinds of other possibilities. We've had several discussions. Nothing really was, it just didn't, it was like jumping through a lot more hoops to get nowhere. So this seemed like the first best alternative if the board approved it. If the board doesn't, then it's plan B, and I'm not sure what plan B is, but that's what they're here to tell you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to make a comment on what Brian just said. So Brian obviously has taken time, to look at all the other possibilities, along with the applicant and state officials and so forth. I think we can dispense with having to go through all that to look at the alternatives. And just simply say that there is no other reasonable alternative other than this variance, and this is a very unique variance, and it is a practical difficulty variance.
No,
which is, I'm sorry,
No, it's not.
it's undue hardship variance. Brian, am I correct?
That's very important to know which variance it is. It's
You're
the
right.
standard hardship variance, the hardest one to get
And that's my
for
point.
standards.
So, and this is extremely difficult. However, that said, and this is not included in the application, the town has a goal of achieving 30% of the town and conserving it, okay? And this would be certainly an important part of achieving that goal. Like, I believe it's 2030, if I'm not wrong. Yep, 3030? No, what?
2030.
2030. It's only 5
We're not
years
going to be
from
here
now.
in 3030.
I won't be here, but no. So, and that's only 5 years from now. So that wasn't included, in this application at all anywhere. Yet I think it's an important factor for us to consider as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so can we hear from the appellant, the applicant?
Hello, Alexander Martin. I'm the appellant. If it pleases you guys, I'd like to have Allison Truesdale from IFNW speak on my behalf. Unless you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, but,
Yeah, we'd love to hear from her.
Thank-
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, my name's Allison Truesdale. I am with two other members of the land acquisition team from IFNW, Laura Drury and Jess Benson. And we also have John Vale here, who is the regional biologist, who is assigned to oversee the Scarborough Marsh Wildlife Management Area, so he can speak to any management issues that you may have. We were made aware that Al and Carrie Martin were interested in selling the portion of their lot that is marshland and abuts the existing wildlife management area. And we met with them on site and walked the area, and it seemed a simple matter to subdivide off the developed portion of their house lot and purchase just the marshland. But when we realized that the ordinance would require the 100 feet of frontage on Black Point Road, that kind of made it almost impossible to find an equitable solution here. So we're asking for this kind of a unique variance to a unique situation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin, can I just ask you to walk through the four criteria for this, for the hardship variance? This is the first one being, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted.
I would say that this would really be the only way to subdivide it, and to still have our lots make sense.
Okay. Second criteria, the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property. This criterion applies to the property, not people, and to an uncommon condition not shared by the neighborhood.
So it says there's the need for this variance is due to the unique circumstances. The parcel has 100 feet of frontage on Black Point Road, but it's really not usable for us, and we'd obviously like to have that sold to IFNW because it right abuts their property. So yeah.
Okay. Third criteria, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
Neighborhood will not change. It's already mostly IFNW, Scarborough, Marsh. This would really just be adding to it, and our developed house lot wouldn't change either.
Okay. Fourth criteria, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner of the property.
No, it's not.
Okay. Do we have any written comments that came in?
The only thing we have for written comments is that in accordance with the shoreline zoning ordinance, whenever we receive a variance appeal, I need to forward that variance appeal to the state of Maine shoreline zoning coordinator. I did so, and we received a response back. And he said, thank you for, this is Jeffrey Kalinich. He said, thank you for submitting the variance application with the shoreline zone department for review and comment. The application involves parcel and shoreline zone, and the subject of the variance request is the town's road frontage standard. The mandatory shoreline zoning act does not establish minimum road frontage standards. Road frontage requirements are established by municipality. As such, the department does not have an opinion on this variance request.
Any other public comments tonight on this? Okay.
Did you open a public comment?
Public comment is open. Any other public comments? All right. We'll close public comments. So I think the only issue here, as Brian identified, is whether the land in this first criteria, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. Now, so if we're talking about the house, and I think we are, the land in question, I think is probably the house, because that's the property for the parcel that has the house. That's the property for which the variance is needed to reduce the frontage down to 25 feet. So that one is a tough one to meet. If the land in question, as Brian identified, refers to the lot that is proposed to be sold to IF&W, well, then I think there's probably no other way for it to yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted, because it's hard to imagine other buyers who would be interested in this type of undevelopable parcel. I don't think that the other, of course, I'm always open to other board members' thoughts. I don't see that the other criteria are difficult to meet here. So what do you all think? Mr. Bork?
Thank you. I have a question really. What is the hardship to the applicant? I'd like to know the specific hardship.
Yeah, I think that's where this is a tough appeal for that reason.
Now, let me follow up with that. There isn't any. Okay. However, okay, it's incumbent upon us to do good. And to me, it's very clear that by selling this property, the swamp, marshland, okay, to the state or city, not the town, I mean, yeah, transferring it, okay. That's doing good. It's helping us to move forward toward an important goal that we have to preserve the marsh. And yes, it does create a situation where the frontage doesn't meet the 100-foot standard. Is that right? So, Mr. Longstaff? Okay. So in this particular case, that doesn't really create any kind of hardship to the applicant. The hardship, the applicant is not asking for any kind of a variance on the home itself. He's not asking to enlarge the home. He's not asking to put an accessory dwelling unit somewhere on that portion of the property. So it's nothing like that. This is very, very unusual. So I think we have to kind of ignore all that. Okay. And,
Well,
and,
yeah.
and really my position is, okay, let's do good. This is the right thing to do.
I'm not sure that the folks from IF&W agree with your characterization of swampland of this parcel, but I mean, look, this first criteria, the land in question, if that applies to the lot as it currently exists, house plus undevelopable portions of the marsh, then you could say that, yes, a component of the land in question, the current lot, cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. There's probably not going to be much of a market for unbuildable marshland. And so I think that there is, if we choose to read the land in question to refer to the full lot that the Martins currently own, then I think we can find criteria number 1 satisfied.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, please.
real quick, it is definitely a unique situation, unlike any that we've had. Usually a variance request is to better or improve a property or do something that they couldn't otherwise do. They're really basically looking for a variance to create a non-conforming lot that in no way will change anything that currently exists other than to provide the inland fisheries and wildlife the ability to manage that portion of the lot that they can't do anything with anyway. So it's not improving their life. It's just adding to some other managed area, some additional managed area. And the only way they can really do that is through a conveyance that creates this non-conforming lot. It doesn't change the access to the lot. It doesn't allow them to impact their neighbors in any way, shape, or form through setback reductions or anything else. It's just simply road frontage. They have 25 feet of road frontage on Moores Road. It's just not 100 feet. They're 75 feet short. There's no easy way to create another 75 feet. In fact, I would say it's nearly impossible to create another 75 feet. So that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But if the board sees the value in doing this, nothing really essentially changes other than you're now providing them a conforming lot through variance, which allows them to get a building permit to put a deck on their house or put a porch on their house or something. Otherwise, creating a non-conforming lot would preclude that.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess for this member, I mean, I'm inclined to find that each of the four criteria are met. And, anyway, I'd be happy to hear other.
I would just say.
Joe, comment?
No.
Okay. I think we're in agreement.
Okay. So I'm going to propose, I'm going to start with the first criterion, which is the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted. And I'm going to propose some findings of fact on that. I think that the land in question here should be read to refer to the entire lot currently held by the owner, the applicant, and that the component that he proposes to sell to IF&W would not otherwise yield a reasonable return without this variance, because he would not be able to sell it at all without the variance being granted. So I propose that we make findings of fact that this criteria is satisfied. All those in favor? Okay. Mr. Campbell, would you propose findings on criteria number 2? We can come back to you if you want.
You want me to read it?
Yes.
So the need of the variance is due in the unique circumstance of the property. The criterion applies to property, not people, and to an uncommon condition not shared by the neighborhood.
Can you propose findings on this?
I do.
You believe this is met?
I do.
Can you propose some findings that we can make about why?
What, can I help him out here?
Yeah,
We
please.
need to move along.
Yeah.
The unique feature of this parcel is that it required road frontage that cannot provide vehicle access to the dwelling unit that it serves. Usually your road frontage does that for you. This does not. There's another parcel at 8 Moores Point Road that also has a similar problem, but other than that, those are the only two properties that I know of on Black Point Road or any of the offshoot roads that have this condition. So I think it's pretty unique.
I propose that we make findings of fact that this criteria is satisfied along the lines that Mr. Longstaff proposed. All those in favor? Okay, 4-0. Mr. Bork, would you take criteria number 3?
Number 3, The granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It doesn't, because of the fact that it all borders marshland, and nothing will change by granting the variance.
All those in favor of adopting findings of fact along those lines? Joe, number 4.
The hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or prior owner of the property. The hardship was not a result of either the current owner or the prior owner of the property. A hardship is just created due to the unique dimensions and position of the property and in no other way. Yeah, I guess, and it's on that basis that that it meets this criteria.
All those in favor of adopting findings along those lines? Do we need to now vote on the variance as a freestanding?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so vote, actually, Doreen, will you call the, yes. I'm going to move that we approve the variance appeal number 2770.
Second,
All those in favor?
we need to call roll.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doreen, can you call the roll?
Al Noonan,
Yes.
David Bork,
Yes,
Joe Doherty,
Yes.
and Mike Campbell.
Yes.
The variance is granted. Okay, all right, so on to our last appeal of the evening. This is appeal number 2771, a limited reduction of yard size residential by Gary and Susan Tapley. Have you guys, you stayed, all right. Do you mind, actually, Brian, do you mind giving us a brief rundown of this appeal?
This is a appeal number, what was it?
2771.
71 is a pretty standard limited reduction of yard size variance. The applicant has a home that was built in 1975, so it meets the first criteria that you're going to come to. That it was in existence before July 3rd of 1991. They simply want to put an addition on the existing garage. The existing garage and dwelling encroach into the front setback slightly. And in order to meet the criteria for the reduction of 10 feet on that front yard setback, they're actually proposing to put their addition back far enough onto the existing structure so that it does not encroach into the structure. So it's pretty standard, just some more living space. Actually, I think going to be an accessory dwelling unit, if I remember correctly, but yes. Thank you for the nod. It's been a long night. So it's an accessory dwelling unit for, relatives and I'm sure the Tapleys will fill you in on any more details that you need.
Terrific. And Mr. and Mrs. Tapley, do you mind popping? Terrific.
No, I'm afraid we have to have you
Yeah,
both be.
you don't both have to.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm not Gary, I'm Michael, so.
I
was
see,
listed
you're
as a
the
representative.
representative. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, so can you explain to us why, I think can you briefly describe the project and just explain why a limited reduction of yard size is needed?
Yeah, so basically we're putting a apartment for ourselves, not an apartment, but a extra room up there with full living space. As you can see, the house was built before with the setbacks at 40 feet. So we're just applying for the reduction of yard size of the 10 feet to get it to essentially almost hit the front of the garage. We're gonna set that back 5 feet to stay within that 30 feet from the road for the setback.
And can you state the exact dimensional reduction requested?
10 feet.
Can you explain how your situation, oh, I'm sorry, and when was the structure erected?
1975.
Okay. Can you explain why the requested reduction is reasonably necessary to permit you to, or to permit the owner to use and enjoy the property in essentially the same manner as other properties are utilized in this zoning district?
Yeah, we're basically just keeping the existing structure and adding on top.
Okay. Due to the physical features of the lot and the location of existing structures in the lot, would it be practical to construct the proposed expansion enlargement in conformance with the currently applicable yard size requirements?
It would eat up most of the yard and you would have to set it back from the back of the garage, which would essentially go into the setback from the rear.
Would the impacts and effects of the enlargement on existing uses in the neighborhood be substantially different from or greater than the impacts or effects of building a structure which conforms to the yard size requirement?
Changes nothing.
Have you commenced construction?
No.
All right. Do we get any written comments on this?
Let's go questions from the board.
Okay.
To the applicant.
Do we have any?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can open public comment. I don't have any written comments for
Okay.
this one. Dorian, we didn't have any written, yeah, just wanted to double check. No written comments, so you can close public hearing.
Public hearing is hereby closed. All right. So any discussion on this one? I am inclined to,
I just want to make a comment that it's very straightforward, limited reduction in yard size to the extent that we can permit.
yeah, I'm inclined to approve this application. So, so do we need to make findings as to each of these criteria, or do we just approve?
You know, if the board please, and I don't want to overstep, but I do have some prepared draft findings here. If you would like me to just quickly go through those, if I can actually lay my hands on them.
I would allow that.
And I don't want to overstep, but due to the lateness of the hour and
Yeah.
small children in the room that would probably like to go to bed. So these are just factual draft findings, okay? And the conclusions are yours, okay? The conclusions are yours. But this, for the first one, yes, it meets the criteria. It was in existence before July 3rd, 1991. I think we can all agree that that's been met. On the second one, and you can actually do an up and down vote if anyone disagrees with any of these findings or
Just show of hands.
votes. And yeah, kind of shorten it up and just do it as one lump sum, if that makes sense. But I'll go through them, and that way it gives you a chance to add any findings or whatever. The second one, request was reasonably necessary. Although the applicant didn't provide photos as the board likes to have, I did do some checking up and down the street. There are several 1.5 to 2-story garage additions to other dwellings. I don't know if they're living space or not, but from a visual perspective, it would not be unreasonable to see this addition on that property. I think that's pretty standard stuff. The third one is due to physical features of the lot. Well, the existing location, existing garage and dwelling make it impractical to construct a second-story addition in a conforming manner. They'd have to slide it way back on the structure, which would both be visually unappealing and look kind of weird. Cost effectively, if they had to put the addition on the back of the thing, now you're digging a new foundation, the costs go up dramatically, and you are using up lot space. So a feasible vertical addition is not something that is unreasonable. So I think that the physical feature is the existing location of the house. Or actually it says location of existing structures. It is the location of the existing structure. On the fourth one, the impacts and effects of the enlargement or expansion. I think this one can be met because, as the applicant said, He's not really impacting anybody to the side, to the rear, or the other side. It's the road frontage. The garage is already there. This is gonna sit on top of the garage. There's probably nobody from the road that's going to complain, as somebody might be impacted from the side or from the rear. So it's quite a ways from the rear setback, quite a ways from both side setbacks. So I think the impact would be pretty negligible. No one would ever really notice this addition impacting them in any way. And the fifth one, he hasn't started construction. I can verify that. So those are the findings that I drafted. If the board would like to add anything to those, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I think you could vote on those and go forward.
Anybody want to add any findings? We okay with those? All right, terrific. So I move that we adopt those proposed findings and that can we also approve this appeal on the same
I
vote?
think you can,
Yeah,
if there are no additional, or nobody has a problem with any of those findings on any of those standards, I think it's reasonable to say, let's just take an up and down vote that all standards have been met and do we have a motion? Just ask for a motion and then we'll do an up and
Yeah.
down vote on that.
I move that we take an up or down vote on whether the criteria are met and whether we are approving this reduction of yard size appeal.
So moved. So second.
All those in favor?
4-0?
4-0.
So it's 4-0 on each of the criteria?
Yep.
And 4-0 on the appeal.
On the appeal.
Correct. Okay, appeal granted.
Thanks for sticking it out.
It was very good, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Next step, building
The
permit.
hell?
There we go.
Okay.
So I would entertain,
Good luck.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. I
I'll
don't know
make a
what else
motion
is-
to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Motion, meeting is adjourned.